Well, while my panelists are joining me on the stage, I want to welcome everyone to the Founders Playbook behind the scenes of entrepreneurship and venture capital. We're so excited today to have this conversation. I think it's going to be great. We've got such a great panel, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today. My name is Ella Turenne, and I'm a doctoral student in the UCI program in visual studies, and I'm also an entrepreneur. So I'm excited to get some great gems and pieces of advice from our panel today. And as we chat, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. I'll be pulling them up and will do my best to incorporate them into our conversation. Before we start, I would really like to thank the Black Management Association at UCI's Paul Merage School of Business for putting on this inaugural conference. It's really an honor to be here today. I've been checking out some of the panels, and it's been such an insightful day. And it's really wonderful to be able to be part of something that lifts up Black voices. So thank you so much for all of your hard work, because I know it's not easy to do. I think we've got almost everybody here. So in the interest of time, we're going to get started. And welcome, panelists. I'm going to just introduce each of you and really briefly, but I would love for you, as I say who you are and where you're from, what your business is, if you could just share with us for 2 to 3 minutes a little bit more about yourselves. And for the audience, all of the panelists' bios are in the program and on the website, so you can read their full bios there, but they're just going to give you a little bit more of who they are and what they're about. So I'm going to start with Peter Swanika, who's the founder of CEO of Monitor QA. Peter?
All right. Hello, everybody. Peter Swanika, founder and CEO of Monitor QA. Based in Carlsbad, just north of San Diego. I attended UCI a while ago, I think, if I can remember, back in 2005. That's when I graduated in the FEMBA program. And since then, I've been involved in various businesses, most recently with a new startup that I'm working on called Monitor QA. Prior to that, I worked for a number of software companies in various industries, from buy.com during the .com days to most recently a semiconductor company called what's it called again? They've been acquired by some other company, but it's called International Rectifier. And then after that, I basically decided to branch out on my own, and that's when I got into entrepreneurship. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. Next, I'm going to ask Jameela Bahar to speak, who is the Platform and Community Associate with HBCU VC. I hope I got all that right.
Yeah, sounds good, Ella. Thank you so much for the intro. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Jamila. I'm the Platform and Community Associate at HBCU VC, where we're building a global innovation economy in order to support Black, Indigenous, and Latinx innovators to boldly create, fail, invest, and thrive. And I know I have a really unique title, platform and community, right? My job is kind of split into 2 roles. One is managing our platform. We have 10 lovely founders in our portfolio right now, so that's super exciting. My kind of heart lies in like platform and founder support and providing them with knowledge and resources in order to get them kind of from one step to the next. And then the second half of my role is really surrounded in community. I love being a community builder and ecosystem builder. So that's a lot where like my background lies.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jamila. I'm going to pass it now to Boya Fajimi, and who is co-founder and CEO of The Future Party.
Hey, pleasure to be here. My name is Boya, as Ella mentioned. The Future Party is a media company. I like to say, think of us like a nice or a complex. Our brand is meant to empower creative professionals to get the information they need to be more successful in their jobs. We've been doing this for 9 years, originally started as a community, hosting events and experiences from parties to dinners and panels in LA and festivals, both in the States and abroad. And we like to have fun while we do it. So we've got a daily newsletter. It goes out to tons of people. And I used to work in entertainment. So I was at WME, a talent agency, and then Paramount Pictures. And now I do this.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Boya. And last but certainly not least, we've got Josanta Gray Emegano, who is founder of Grayskilled Media.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and creator of Grayskilled Media, which is basically a boutique brand management firm that specializes in working with women-owned, minority-owned businesses in fashion and beauty and helping them navigate launching with major retailers, especially if you have a product-based business. A Target or a Sephora might approach you and you're super excited and eager to work with them. And so you start saying yes to the wrong things, which will eventually kind of harm your bottom line. And so I try to lessen that learning curve for my clients and walk them through that process, which previously I was a chief operating officer of a cosmetics company called Beauty Bakery. And then before that, I was an agent at CAA. So both of those experiences kind of led me into this entrepreneurship journey that I've been on for the last 2 years.
Thank you so much. So we're going to dive right into our conversation. And I love having read your bios and heard about all your experiences. I think what's great about what you all bring to the table, or what we all bring to the table, is we have a breadth and depth of experiences, from working for other companies to working for ourselves and starting our own businesses. I mean, all of these different spaces have their own special challenges and rewards. So I'm wondering, I want to start off first with, for those folks who are just starting a business or thinking about starting a business, getting on this entrepreneurial path, how do you know that an idea is a good one, that it has promise, that it's going to actually be something that will take off? And we know that there are a lot of steps to this, right? But maybe you could share like what your experience has been with really landing with the thing that you know is the thing, and what are some of the markers that you can offer folks, you know, checks and balances to know if your idea is really working or is going to work. And maybe we can start with Jamila and then we can just popcorn around.
Sure. So I guess I'll start there. That's a really interesting question, because I feel like you don't know necessarily that it's working till it's working, right? Like nobody knew how to build the first airplane until it was off the ground, right? So I think that's a great question. As far as, I guess, how you know your idea is working, right? Like I think there's kind of generic things where there's like, is there product market fit? Is there a need for this? But essentially a lot of it is trial and error. And, you know, as a failed entrepreneur, we're still kind of working in the startup space. You know, I think really you learn a lot from, you know, problem and solution solving. Like I don't think it's one of those things where you just know if it's a good idea, the entrepreneur bug just bites you and you go for it. And I think really it's about just having conviction about, you know, your idea and really, you know, trying to make it work. But I don't necessarily feel like it's you know, if it's right or wrong, or if it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah, and I love how you said also there's failure involved. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, you really can't be afraid of that, because that also teaches you lessons. Right. So yeah, those are great points. And I see Josanta, you want to chime in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you never know if an idea is going to work. And some of it is also about timing. And speaking from personal experience, when I first started Grayskilled, generally my pitch was, I'm helping companies actually with brand partnerships. That's actually something easy for people to digest. How to get X brand into a product placement, how to get X brand to work with talent. And I had someone question, like, does someone need your retail service at the time? Like, what does that actually mean? But that wasn't something I said at the forefront, but that actually truly was my passion. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, the surge of Black Lives Matters and someone having to lose their life, you know, on camera, for everyone to take a moment and see like, there is a disproportionate number of Black-owned brands that are on shelf space. So you have this surge of retailers now reaching out to Black-owned brands who are like, oh my God, what do I do? So it kind of created an open window for me to have this open conversation about what I do.
Right. And, that's interesting too, that, people will question you along the way, and you kind of just have to like stick to your guns and know what your product is, what your service is, to be clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Peter, you wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I second, what both Jamila and Jacinta said. But really, at the end of the day, I think it's all about mindset. As an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to essentially jump off the cliff and believe in yourself, and believe that if you do land on your back, it's not the worst that could happen. You'll learn a lot along the way, if you go in with the right mindset and with the right attitude, you can make it work. It's all about listening to your customers, listening to the market, and basically delivering what customers want. And if you have a great product and you really pay attention to your customers, you'll do well.
Also, going to agree with a lot of what's been said. And while it may be hard to predict what will eventually be successful, I think there's filters that will set you up for the best success. And so, one thing that many people, in one way or another, is making sure that you're solving a true need and that you're creating value. If then more times than not, you're going to create something that's successful, because people purchase products because they want to solve something that is inherently a need or a desire. And so entrepreneurs are really finding businesses out of needs and desires. And so is oftentimes we'll create products and we may not. But if you can create a product that you yourself need, that's a surefire way to understand if this might be successful, if you're the actual end user. And so those are some filters that I look for. And then from there, go out and test and fail. And there's a term many people may have heard of, but this idea of an MVP, right? Your minimum viable product. Don't like hold things tightly and then like spend 2 years. Start asking people, getting feedback, create a splash page, get emails, and that's another way that you can start to ensure your success along the way.
Boy, I think those are such great points. And what many of you were saying makes me think about the personal connection that we might have with these products and services that we're developing. It really does make a difference to know who your target audience is, and to really even reach beyond that to get very precise information. And you offered a number of other, pieces of advice about really how you get started. So I'm wondering if other folks can chime in with the things that you found, the tools or strategies, processes that you found that really work in terms of getting something off the ground, getting an idea off the ground.
We chime in. I'll go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I know for me, in LA, there's a lot of great programs like Grid 110 that I was able to actually put my company through. So though it was in the idea to prototype stage, which is funny because that's what their program was called. They took a lot of us really, really early stage founders and put us all kind of in this cohort-based group where we kind of went through the basics and fundamentals of entrepreneurship and startups. So they took us through building out our lean canvas, looking at MVPs, looking at our initial customers and consumers, and doing that product market fit and branding and all that different stuff like that. So I think finding a program that especially caters maybe to earlier stage companies is a great place to start. Because it gets you in touch with mentors and different people that can support you in your company. I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice. And I would say for folks who are looking for those kinds of programs, there are an abundance of them. Sure. And especially there are so many that are targeted towards women, towards people of color, towards Black folks. But I would also say that if you can't find a sort of like a structured group or a program like that, to just look for your peers who are also starting off on this journey, or find mentors. Look at brands that you like and see if you can find some way to be in conversation with other entrepreneurs. I think the main piece of what you're saying, Jamila, is community is so important, right? Like, not just for learning, but also I have found for accountability. Sometimes we need other folks to help hold our feet to the fire so that we can do all of these things, because it's not an easy journey.
Right.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. And, being an entrepreneur can be quite a lonely journey, because sometimes the people around you don't really understand what you're going through.
Absolutely.
Or the challenges that you're going through. So having, people that you can bounce off ideas, off of that can understand what you're going through and can offer advice is very helpful as well. So, getting the right mentors and connecting with the right people in the industry is definitely a good idea.
I was also going to say that, to your point, Ella, like there's an abundance. It's almost like overload. Where do you go? Like, how do you find those templates? How do you, find out about these cool programs like Grid 110 or General Assembly? And one thing that I've even started to learn and adopt is tapping into community using social media. And, Twitter, for some reason, is a treasure trove of really smart people that can point you in the right direction across the board. And if you can follow those people, make sure you're checking, you will learn so many different programs, websites, courses, whatever. And so I found that to be really helpful. And newsletters as well, I think, is another cool resource that's free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would also add to that, I totally agree with you. And I would even say, although, folks kind of like poo-poo sometimes at Facebook as being an antiquated thing, but groups in Facebook can be really helpful. I think you have to be discerning though, because one of the things you said, Boya, that I think is key is getting good advice. And there is a difference between advice and good advice. So, being around people who are supportive, but who actually have good knowledge and resources that will actually move you forward rather than, lead you in a path that you don't really need to be going is important as well.
And also something really simple, you could probably Google the word accelerator or incubator and see a lot of the top ones, and not the really good ones, don't just have actual programs, but they have web content that you can start to like what you actually are interested in for business.
Yeah, but yeah, just to add to that, I think the most important thing on this journey is to take the first step. So just because you don't have access to an accelerator, or you don't have access to funding, or access to mentors, etc., don't let that stop you. Take that first step. Because as I think a famous person once said, a journey of 1,000 steps begins. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, right? So sometimes I think we get caught up in our own inertia and our own inaction, and are afraid to take that first step. And once you get started with that first step, you'll see that things start lining up, right? So
absolutely,
that's what I wanted to add to that.
And I would even say, just piggybacking on what Peter had mentioned, I think in some of the conversation we might be assuming if you're looking at an accelerator, you already have an idea, you already have a product, because sometimes those are requirements to join those accelerators. But if you're looking to get something off the ground and you're just like, I have an idea, where do I begin? Begin with the product or the service that you're offering. If it is a product-based business, you're going to have to search manufacturers and see if those manufacturers match your overall business and your ethos and can actually create the product and the prototype that you're looking for. Or maybe it's a prototype you have to cut and sew and do some things on your own to be able to take it to them in order to have that first step and it being made into something.
I wonder if you each could talk a little bit about something that you wish that you had known, when you were starting on your journey, that you learned later, but has become like really valuable for you? What do you wish that your earlier entrepreneurial self had known now that you've been on this journey for a bit?
The thing that I typically always say when I'm asked this is I had no idea really how lonely it could be for me. And I didn't know, because coming from, especially an academic environment, then going into a major corporation where there's constantly people around, there's constantly, you already have like, you know, your school best friend, that person that you want to go and do all your group projects with. At work, you have your work wife or your work husband that you can bounce ideas off of. When you're starting a company from scratch by yourself, it's like, okay, I have my fur babies. Like, they can't talk back to me about my ideas. And like my friends and people that are in my tribe, they, as we mentioned before, they don't really understand this world just yet. They'll learn it through watching you, to be honest. So in the beginning, it was very lonely because I was so used to having colleagues or that person in the school that you're used to doing things together with.
It's so true. It is a lonely road. I think that's why we crave also being around other people who sort of just understand the language, right? That's so important. Also, just to keep because it is such a tough journey to have like the endurance to do it. I think sometimes you need that little push to also see that other people are experiencing the same thing, and it's okay, and that's part of it, and you just got to keep it pushing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I said earlier. It's a lot of it is about your mindset. You know, it's everything is going to take twice as long and be twice as hard as you expect it to be. So, you know, when you start a new venture, you know, it's about being patient. You know, believing in the vision that you had, you know, when you started, you know, on this journey, and basically, you know, having the patience to stick with it, because, you know, every, you know, possible, you know, scenario that you haven't even thought of will get thrown at you, and you have the resiliency to figure out how to get around it and get past all those obstacles. You know?
I was that question's it's a really interesting one. What I wish I would have known, because I would know nothing if I hadn't done it. You know, so it's like I value every mistake ever, because now I know, you know. Yeah. We can tell you all the things we wish we would have known, but it's kind of like if you're a kid and you don't burn your hand, you won't really ever know. So, you know, that's just the disclaimer. But two things that I, you know, hope to do better from what I've learned is delegation. Just like, I think a lot of people need to understand, especially if you're the leader, the goal is to, as quick as possible, get things off your plate. Like, replicate yourself, automate yourself, delegate. And that'll help you move quickly. But the issue with delegation is that you need money to be able to do it effectively, whether that's automation tools or hiring people. And so it's really about making sure that you're focused on the business. And I know sometimes people can't afford to delegate, but that's why, you know, the internet's given us a lot of amazing tools. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing that I want to do better is speed at making decisions. To Peter's point, it definitely is longer. Everything is longer than you think it will take, but you can speed that process up by just making decisions, period. Sometimes they'll be bad, sometimes they'll be good, but if you don't make quick decisions, it will make that process 4 times slower. So those are two things I wish I could do better.
Yeah, boy, I think, that the last point you raised is very critical. I think sometimes, you know, we get caught up in, you know, what I like to call analysis paralysis, where we want to, you know, of a spreadsheet and analyze everything you know, every which way in order to come up with a decision. And sometimes, especially, you know, in a startup environment, you don't have all the information in order to make a decision. And sometimes you just have to understand that there are a lot of known unknowns, but you have to move forward and you have to decide, you know. So don't, you know, get caught up in the fact that you don't have all the facts, but, you know, you just have to be able to make a decision and move forward at some point.
Absolutely. I love those points, and especially on the piece about making decisions, freeing up your time and stress, right? You don't want to be caught in paralysis analysis because it's also very stressful unnecessarily in most cases.
More thing?
Yeah, please.
This is one thing that I'm really learning right now, which is to take care of your body, to take care of your mind, to take care of your soul, and to spend time with your friends and family. And, you know, work is good, and it's definitely going to be hard work. And I think many entrepreneurs, they work for that future freedom, but it's important along the way. So, and that doing that will give you energy to even excel more in your business.
Absolutely.
I love that, and just wanted to jump in because it, my mind, I wish I had known actually how to forgive myself early in being an entrepreneur, because when you work for other people, you have a boss that's holding you accountable. Oh, you didn't get that presentation done by 2, or you didn't, you know, do your best or whatever at this meeting, and you're coming to them looking for the, oh, it's okay, like get them next time. But when you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur, you have to do that for yourself of, all right, I didn't consistently post, or I didn't get certain emails out in a, you know, certain time period. So being able to find the time and the grace to allow yourself to forgive yourself when you don't necessarily meet certain goals that you set, and it's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's so true. And we're our harshest critics at the same time, right? It's really easy to fall into that trap, and to also look around to what other entrepreneurs are doing, and to say, and to make comparisons to ourselves and the work that we're doing with others. And that also leads to that trap. So I've also learned, okay, you can know what's going on and acknowledge, be happy for what they're doing, and then do your own thing and give yourself that space to do what you need to do. Our journey is going to be different from everybody else's journey. I wanted to pivot back to some of the points that we were talking about, especially Boya, you mentioned delegating, because I think that's so important to avoid burnout, to think about the things that you could do but don't have to do. And that does involve funding sometimes. And that's one of the questions that's raised in the chat. You know, it's the age-old question, right? Especially if you're developing a tangible product, but even if you've got a service, you know, there are all sorts of things that go along with building a business that really do require funding. So I'm wondering, in the plethora of ways that, you know, we can acquire funding, what are some of the things that have worked for you? Do you have any concrete resources that you can mention for folks to check out or put in the chat? I think, you know, that's one of the critical questions that everybody always wants to know. But let's see from you all what thoughts you have about the question of funding.
On my end, and Boya kind of talked about this before, is really leaning into your community. Because if you have a business and it's product or service based, maybe you have a cosmetics company, another classmate or someone that you know in your community has an apparel company. There's no reason why the two of you can't join forces and use the same amount of funds to do a photo shoot together. When someone has an apparel line, you have to put makeup on the models. So why not collaborate with a cosmetics company to do that, sharing those costs? You guys can share in those marketing dollars and those assets. So for me, in the beginning, you know, it becomes very hard to bootstrap and pay for everything in and of yourself, and you become a little discouraged. But definitely lean on your community and find ways for you guys to collaborate and share those resources.
I was going to say, our world revolves around relationships, and whether you're funding for a project or funding for your business, the numbers and strategies, all that is incredibly important. But at the end of the day, people want to be around, invest in people that they click with. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, one thing that I recommend is to build relationships. And you may meet a partner, you may meet an investor, you may not need anything from them. Develop that relationship 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Don't expect anything. And then when you actually need something, that's when it becomes that. And oftentimes we'll go out and we'll go and try to find the money cold, and it's not impossible, but it's much harder to meet someone, click with them, and then ask them for a check, but if you're developing those relationships before you need it, as to the best of your ability, it'll go that much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely super important. I think definitely tapping into your network is critical. But sometimes as Black founders, it's difficult to tap into the money network just because, especially in Silicon Valley, for example, a lot of the VCs are controlled by white founders, for example, right, or white VCs. So it's critical to also be able to support our own community and be able to support our own enterprises without having to sit there and wait for somebody to write your check. But developing those relationships is really important. When I started my business, I raised money initially from friends and family, and then once I became more successful, then I was able to tap into more institutional funds. But I think just sitting there and expecting that you can create a business plan and somebody's going to write you a check, sometimes can be foolhardy. So tap into the networks that you have.
I think that's a great strategy too, because sometimes being able to raise your own capital is kind of like proof of concept and attracts other funding. Like you said, you can then get bigger. People want to be part of something that's successful. So if they see you sort of like doing this more grassroots effort to build your business, it's likely to impress folks who will be more willing to give you the funding that they may not have if you were starting just from scratch. One of the other questions that's in the chat is about venture capital funding. And it is true that there are, the majority of these ventures are led by white folks, but I'm wondering if we know of any that we can suggest that are centering people of color, run by people of color, or areas in which folks can do their own research to find those resources. And what are some of the strategies to tap into some of those networks and resources as well?
I try to be as optimistic as possible, even though it can be tough when it comes to the venture arm, because you're right, traditionally it's been controlled by a specific type of individual and gender. But times are definitely changing, for the better. At least there's more opportunity, and it's definitely seems to be a great time, the better time than any to be a minority and go and seek funding. Not that we should, it's not about color or now that, it's just an opportunity to actually showcase people with real skill, which were overlooked because of their color in the past. And so a couple places people may or may not have heard of, there's a company called MAC. They're part of a larger organization called Macro. They just raised $110 million. They're great, run predominantly by Black men, individuals. Backstage Capital is a big one, run by Arlen. Kapoor Capital in SF is really great to minorities. There's a new community called Valence that is connected to a ton of different investors who are Black, which is awesome. There's a lot out there. You just kind of have to do your research.
Yeah, but just to add to that, I think before you even seek VC capital, it's important to ask yourself whether the business or the idea you have is fundable, right? Is it something that VCs would want to put their money into? If, for example, your dream is to open a coffee shop, well, maybe that's not something that a VC would want to fund, right? Also, be careful about bringing on the wrong investors, because trust me, they can make your life miserable. Because you think you're the boss, but really the folks that are writing the checks end up becoming your bosses, and sometimes they can steer you in the wrong direction, or force you to make certain decisions that may not be compatible with what your vision is. So it's about making sure that A, your idea is fundable, and B, bringing on the right investors that would support you, not just write your check and make your life miserable.
That's such a great piece of advice, because I think sometimes what may look very appealing because we think it'll propel us to the next level actually will take us back. And sometimes we have to, as entrepreneurs, make those hard decisions, to actually say no to those things that look like on the surface they may be good opportunities. Saying no, I think, is a powerful thing as an entrepreneur, setting your own boundaries, knowing sort of what you will accept and what you won't accept, what works well for your business or what doesn't work for your business. I think that kind of clarity makes you so much stronger as an entrepreneur, and really allows you, it could feel like it could be constricting, but I think it allows you the freedom to really build in a way that is authentic and intentional for whatever you're creating. Some of the other, another question that's risen to the top is, what is the one thing that keeps your entrepreneur spirit on fire? And what makes it okay to wake up at 4 a.m. to begin your day? Does anybody wake up at 4 a.m.? I know some people who do, and I have great admiration for them. I'm not one of them, but I'm curious as to how you keep it going. And I think this ties back to the conversation we were having about self-care as well. And maybe share like some of your practices, like some of the things that you do to keep yourself balanced.
Yeah, I mean, being on this journey can be all consuming. It's like you're never, it's not a 9-to-5 job, right? So if a customer calls you at 8 p.m., you have to pick up that phone, right? So I think you have to be ready to give it your all, but at the same time, like Boya said, take some time to take care of yourself. And I, for example, put exercise on my calendar, and every day I try and work out, and it's on my calendar. And when I schedule meetings and stuff like that, I know that between say 9 and 10 a.m. I'm supposed to be at the gym. So I make time to work out and make sure that I try and take care of myself. But at the same time, recognizing that it's not a 9-to-5 job, and sometimes you got to get up at 4 a.m, and sometimes you have to stay up till midnight.
Yeah. Like, set boundaries for yourself, because I for sure am infamous for waking up. I'll have a matcha from Starbucks, and then I'll look up and it's 4 o'clock and I haven't had breakfast or lunch. So starting at the beginning of this year, I put on my calendar at 1 o'clock, you have to take lunch. So no calls can be scheduled from 1 to 2, and it's like a mandatory lunch break. So you have to do that for yourself, especially if like, hey, you're very passionate about this, and you'll just start running and not mindful that you need that break.
I think both of you touch on the fact that your calendar could be your best accountability buddy, making sure that you just schedule things in just like you would schedule anything else. And, you have to make that time for yourself as well. I think that's great advice.
Questions you had asked was how we keep the fire.
Yeah.
For me, it's just to be goal oriented and have a deeper mission, right? Because really, I think when people create businesses, I think oftentimes it's a part of the deeper mission, right? A deeper mission could be, I want to take care of others, I want to be with my family, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, it's holding on to that deeper mission that gets me going. And sometimes I do wake up at 4. It's been a while, but when things are crazy, working out is a good one for sure. Meditate, pray is really good. Things to slow down your minds. One thing too that I've started to do is not if I'm driving somewhere, to not listen to anything. and to just like sit there in my thoughts, because oftentimes we are just bounced from one thing to the other and we get overloaded and we actually don't. And then like, I don't know that watching TV is resting, right? So like, I like the idea of just like, taking it in for a second. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I love that. I find driving time, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because driving time is such a good meditative, like thinking, mulling over. There's nothing else you can do but think while you're in the car, unless you've got music or you could listen to audiobooks. They do that too, but it's good thinking time to be in the car, especially if you've got a long drive. Jamila, do you have any thoughts about what keeps you going?
Sure. No, I would just echo what everybody else said. It is definitely a new habit to start scheduling lunch breaks and, different times that I need for myself in my calendar. Like Peter said, I have workout time on my calendar. I have lunch scheduled on my calendar. And I think it's just really important to be mindful. 'Cause like Josanta said, you can go a whole day and you realize like, oh, I haven't eaten. Like, no wonder I'm not focused. Or because you really, really see those effects, especially after like long term. Of not taking care of yourself. You're like, oh, I'm tired all the time. My mood's changing. So I think it's super important to just be mindful of those things and to take care of yourself, especially on this journey for sure. I think as far as what keeps the fire going, I think knowing that this is your baby, like you've put all this time and energy and effort into this thing. And especially when you've taken the time to solve a problem for a customer, even if it's one customer, I think that's just something that kind of keeps me convicted, just knowing that I'm providing a service or solution to someone that really needs it and really loves it. So
great. Well, we're coming down to our last few minutes, and one of the questions that I think in the chat is really interesting is, so I asked you all before, what you wish you knew, but somebody in the chat asked what you would have done differently. Is there anything that you would have done differently? And if so, what would that be?
I would have said no to more things. I think it's easy to get distracted by the shiny objects. Like, oh, this idea would be great. This project would be good. I'm going to run 2 companies at once. And you learn that the lack of focus can be a big detriment. It's like, do one thing extremely, extremely well, then you can do other things. And I think early on, I tried to do a lot of things and not one thing really, really well. And by the way, there's plenty of examples in the public that reinforce this. You look at a company like Google, they are the best search engine on the planet. Just a little thing that you do to go find something. And they make billions of dollars off that, which allow them to do other things. And I try to apply that same mentality to the little things and strategies that we're doing with the business. It's like, no, let's focus on this one thing so that we can go and do other things once we've arrived.
I love that example too, because again, linking back to our earlier conversations about failure as well. I mean, they also have many products which have failed. So just as an example of, you can have success and failure and have it live in the same place. And it's all right. Like, they're still doing well. They're doing even better now, than they were a couple of years ago. And it's all about trial and error, just trying something, testing it out, seeing if an idea works. And then if it doesn't, you learn from that, and then you go on to the next thing.
yeah, I think for me, I guess alternatively to Boya's comment, for me, I was a little bit too hyper-focused. I think that was my issue. And one kind of piece of advice that I got from my mentor is like, if you wait until it's perfect, it's too late. So though there's an element of focus, right? You need to focus to get things done and get things right. If you're hyper focused, right, then you're letting everything else go by the wayside, and that's not always correct either. So that's kind of my piece of advice I tell myself.
So you have to have the good balance, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
I'd throw out there, don't break your own rules. So when you create your own business, service, product base, there's going to be 10 commandments or whatever that you would live by, or advice that you would also offer to other entrepreneurs. Make sure you're also following it. And I say that just because in the beginning, I had, packages, services, and payments and rates that I would offer. But then I'd speak to this amazing founder because I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm like, oh, I can tweak that for her. Oh, I can do a little bit there for that person. And you start chipping away and compromising at what your rules and commandments are. So I think back to even Boya's point, it's okay to say no, or, certain things are not meant for you if it doesn't fit within your 10 commandments. So don't break your own rules.
Yep. And just to add to that, I'd say, surround yourself with great people. I've always believed that great companies are made of great people. And especially when you're starting out, launching a company, for example, making the wrong hire can be, disastrous, because, that one person can have a huge impact on the rest of your company. For example, if you pick the wrong co-founder, your whole company could go down the drain. So, make sure that you're discerning about the people that you bring on board, and make sure that, you surround yourself with great people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to end our panel. Such great advice from everyone. There's a bunch of resources as well in the chat, so I hope folks have been checking that out. I really want to thank all of my panelists today for joining us and dropping so many gems. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope folks in the audience have gotten some good takeaways from this. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the conference.